Drones are becoming ubiquitous everywhere on the battlefield. The combination of drones and AI enables is this concept of unlimited mass. It's really hard to understand how big the gap is between China and the USA in terms of AI capabilities. I am confident in saying the United States is number one, but China is improving at a faster rate than the USA.
Once you warned Taiwanese military leadership that China is conducting GPS jamming around Taiwan, how serious is this problem?
I think it's a huge problem. This is the problem that Ukraine has experienced against Russia. We operate there every single day with our VBAT aircraft. GPS and communications are jammed on 100% of the missions.
So I'm a little bit curious about how developed is Taiwan's defense industry?
Taiwan's defense industry is... Again, I've been to war. It is awful. It is ugly. I never want my kids to have to go to war. I'd never want Taiwan to ever experience a war against China.
Hello， 大家好，我是志祺，欢迎回到强者我朋友。在俄乌战争爆发之后呢，世界开始意识到无人机主宰战争的时代来了。而无人机作战的一大重点是 AI， 谁能够让无人机群自主的作战，谁就掌握了优势。因此，美国还有中国都在全力的冲刺军用无人机跟 AI 领域。那到底现在谁占上风？还有，如果两岸真的开打，台湾的无人机和 AI 堪用吗？那为了搞清楚这件事情呢，今天我们邀请到了一个特殊的人哦，他曾经是美国海军海豹部队的军官，亲身的上过战场。现在呢，他的公司则是全球最受瞩目的国防科技独角兽之一。他们开发的无人机 AI 系统，更已经在乌克兰完成了数百次的实战任务。那此外呢，他还有一个对于台湾人来说蛮特别的身份，他是曾国藩的第5代子孙。虽然在美国出生长大，但现在呢也多次来到台湾参与台美合作。他就是 Shield AI 的总裁曾国光 Brandon。那今天呢，我们就要来问问 Brandon， 无人机跟 AI 怎么样改写了战争的规则？在这场军事科技的革命当中，美军有可能被中国超越吗？就让台湾面临怎样的新形态威胁？而我们是否有能力抵御呢？不过在开始之前呢，先让我们进一段工商服务时间。你有听过餐桌剧场吗？在花莲芝雅干部落的山脚下，阿改玩生活和山东野表演坊合作打造了一场让你边吃饭边看戏的沉浸式体验。演员就在你的餐桌旁演出，甚至会搭配剧情上菜。从2022年开始呢，他们就以部落当代议题为主轴推出多部作品，而今年的新作《爱的囚徒》只是想要带观众暂时离开现实的压力，重新思考部落生活的样貌。活动在5月1号到5月3号，跟5月8号到5月10号，花莲火车站呢有接驳车，搭台铁就能够当天来回。现在预定呢有双人优惠，还可以加购多罗满赏金，白天看海，晚上看戏，一次玩透花莲的山跟海。另外呢，还有包场或是其他体验，也欢迎洽询，赶快到资讯栏看看吧。Hi, Brandon. Thank you so much for joining us today. Please say hi to our audience.
Hello. Thanks so much for having me, Shasha. Really excited to do this.
Okay, first, I want to be upfront. We're not military experts here. So most of what we know about the US military honestly comes from movies and the news. But what is the biggest difference between real combat and what we see in Hollywood?
Actually, movies are what inspired me to become a Navy SEAL. When I became a Navy SEAL, you realize about only 1% of what you do is like the movies.
Oh, only 1%.
Yeah. And so most of the time, 99% of it is call it the dull, important stuff, right? It's the planning, it's the operations, it's the execution. Rarely does it become as high intensity as something that you might find in a military action movie. Not rarely, but it's just 1%.
In your experience, what does US military superiority actually come down to?
The U.S. military superiority and what we've been able to do, it comes down to superiority in technology, superiority in operations, what we would like to call a joint warfighting concept. But what the U.S. military is really, really good at is getting all the different pieces of the military to play nicely together. Those are your fighter jets are able to communicate with the people who are conducting an assault. They're able to communicate with the ships, our missiles, our weapon systems. They're all focused on the operation. And it's actually a really hard thing to do well. And so at the end of the day, we just have vastly more combat and war experience than any other military on the planet. And so again, the technology is an important aspect of it, but it's not the only aspect of it.
And which part of that chain is most prone to failure or most underestimated?
Yeah, I think sometimes one of the mistakes that militaries make are they think if they just buy the technology or the right products that's all they have to do, right? And the truth of the matter is it's so much more, right? You have to get the logistics right. You have to get the sustainment right. You have to get the maintenance right. You have to practice and rehearse on your equipment all the time. And that's where I think a lot of militaries fall short. As I travel the globe, they think, okay, well, this product, I'll buy it and it'll solve all my problems. At the end of the day, you have to invest in that training, in that maintenance, in that sustainment, in the rehearsal, practicing with your equipment.
You have participated in missions in Afghanistan, right? But the U.S. eventually withdrew, and some people took that to mean the U.S. lost or that America would eventually abandon its allies. How do you see it?
The war in Afghanistan, our withdrawal in 2021, having fought in that war, it was sad for me to see that happen. At the end of the day, there are a lot of challenges in that war in Afghanistan that we couldn't go after the Iranians were influencing. We weren't going to go into Iran during that time. The Taliban would go into Pakistan. And so whenever you go after a military target, right, you have to isolate and contain the target. This is something that we would do in the SEAL teams, right? It's this idea, if you have a special operations force, you surround, or a police force, right? They surround a building. They say, we have you surrounded. No one goes into the building. No one goes out of the building. It's the exact same thing with military operations, and what the United States, in my opinion, failed to do during the Afghan war was isolate and contain Afghanistan. Enemies could come, they could leave Afghanistan and go into Iran or Pakistan, and people from Iran and Pakistan could come into Afghanistan at will. So we never isolated or contained the target, and that eventually led to, a loss in Afghanistan.
In our research, we came across the story of how Shield AI got started. It traced back to one of your missions in Afghanistan, right? Could you tell us more about that?
My experiences in combat in Afghanistan, a lot of my teammates' experiences in combat in Afghanistan are what led me to found Shield AI. I got to witness firsthand the dangers that we would do conducting operations. Going inside buildings is perhaps the most dangerous thing that special operations forces would do and get into close quarters combat. This is gunfights at very, very close ranges. It looks really cool in the movies. It's terrifying in real life. And so for me, I was asking myself, hey, is there a better way to solve this problem? What is the role that AI and autonomy plays in the military? This was back in 2015. What does the military of 2035 look like? And what is the role AI and autonomy play? And I decided that AI and autonomy should be powering, commanding, maneuvering every single military asset, every drone, and not just aerial drones, but surface drones, underwater drones, ground vehicles, every ship, every airplane. AI should be commanding all of it. And that's what led me to start the company with my brother Ryan and our third co-founder, Andrew.
Back then, were drones already being widely used on the battlefield?
Yeah, I used lots of drones in Afghanistan. I was primarily using the Predator drone, which is famous, very, very large drone. It's the size of a full-sized airplane, weighs thousands of pounds. And then we were just getting started using smaller drones. These were things like the in situ Scan Eagle. There was one that you threw. It was called the Puma, the Raven. These are smaller intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance drones that we were using.
I think the Russia-Ukraine war has made people realize just how significant drones can be on the battlefield. How would you describe the role drones play in the modern warfare?
Drones are becoming ubiquitous everywhere on the battlefield. Russia-Ukraine is kind of that first indication of it, but I believe that every single military in the world is going to build a 1 million drone army. And then it'll eventually become 5 million, and then 10 million drones.
Why?
Just because they are so effective on the battlefield. And at the end of the day, there's a fundamental principle of warfare called mass. This is as old as warfare itself. If you had more mass, if you had more people on the battlefield, you tend to win more wars, more battles. The combination of drones and AI enables is this concept of unlimited mass. And so that's why I think you'll see lots of countries field 1 million drone armies. Taiwan looking to field 40,000 to start. The United States is gearing up. Don't discount that in the next 5 years, you will see more than half the countries who are at the top of the list in terms of military spend and forward thinking say, we need to build a drone army.
Okay, so that's why you've talked about large swarms or cheap drones eventually replacing small number of expensive manned jets. Are you saying that we are heading towards a future where wars are primarily fought by drones?
I think people still play a very important role in warfare, but I think you're going to see far less people on the physical battlefield. And we've already seen that. World War II is 90% on the battlefield, 10% in support. In Afghanistan and Iraq, it was 10% were on the battlefield, 90% were in support. So I think you'll start to see, again, people just become more effective with these drone technologies. You're not going to get rid of every person on the battlefield, but you've already seen as more technology has proliferated, there have been less people that are actually required to accomplish the mission.
Okay, if we talk about mass, we talk about drones, and we will talk about China.
Yeah.
Yeah, China has been developing rapidly in the field of drones, and some even say that their drones are the best in the world. Did you agree with that?
I think what they have some of the best like commercial drones in the world with DJI.
Yeah, DJI.
Yeah, but there's a spectrum of drones. There's everything from small quadcopters to one-way attack drones that are bigger. Our VBAT is what we call a Group 3 drone. It's 3 meters tall, weighs about 180 pounds. That's more of a strategic level drone. And then you have the very strategic drones, which are AI piloted fighter jet drones. Shield AI is building our own vertical takeoff, launch, and land fighter jet drone. And so China is not dominant in the drone space. Where they are very, very good is they're very good at commercial quadcopters, and they are also they're very good at the very small tactical drone. But the United States is still best in the world at the mid-size and very large strategic drones.
Okay, so where does China actually stand in terms of overall military capability? What are their strengths and weaknesses?
The Chinese military, perhaps the number one thing that they have going for them is their industrial manufacturing production, right? They can just build lots and lots and lots of weapons, missiles, rockets, because they have that industrial production capabilities. Where I think they probably are weakest, and it's really hard to tell because they are a very opaque society. They don't like to let people see what they're doing, especially around their military. But it is an untested military, right? They actually haven't been in an active conflict. It's really hard to see how well they would actually do in a fight. There's an old saying that we have in the United States, everybody has a plan until you get hit in the face. What I don't know is how China's military would react once they get hit in the face, right? They can show really well, but once you get into a fight, that's when you really find out what you're made out of.
But you have also said that even though the US leads China in AI right now, if China keeps iterating faster, it's only a matter of time before they catch up. So how big is that gap right now?
It's really hard to understand how big the gap is between China and the USA in terms of AI capabilities. I am confident in saying the United States is number one. But as you said, right, that I've said previously, what matters most is how quickly you iterate, what we call cycle time. How can you improve, keep improving at the end of the day? And China is improving at a faster rate than the USA. So one, I think it's a major problem. At the same time, that's why I think you need to see the USA partner with other countries, because if you look at, China, their industrial production capabilities are probably better than the USA. But if you look at the USA plus all of our allies and partners and look at that total manufacturing capacity, then we are better than China. And so I don't think about China versus the USA. I think about China versus the USA, Taiwan, Japan, Korea, all of our allies and partners in the region. That's what I think is most important. And that's why it's still a problem, but I'm not terrified of it, right? Because we just bring more to the fight together than we would as one single country.
But that makes me want to bring up a common concern about AI in defense. Some critics said that applying AI to weapons lowers the threshold for war and makes killing cheaper, easier, and less accountable. What's your response to that?
No, I don't think that's the case at the end of the day at all. One, humans will make the moral decisions about the use of lethal force on the battlefield. It's a very human decision to make. That's my policy, Shield AI policy, US policy, NATO policy. No one wants to see autonomous killer robots on the battlefield, and I don't think you will see autonomous killer robots on the battlefield. People were saying technology, AI, and drones will actually be the biggest deterrence for war in the long run. And we see that today where if you shoot down someone else's fighter jet because that's how you're operating, that can lead to a war, right? Because you've taken a human life and that's a big challenge. But previously, like we've had our drone shot down and it doesn't cause two countries to go to war. And so I think, again, as countries begin to proliferate these drones, there will be more tolerance around drones being destroyed. And also, it'll just prevent countries from going to war because they recognize it's like, all right, they've got a large AI drone army. We have a large AI drone army. There's no winning, right? It's a deterrent at the end of the day.
Okay, so how does Shield AI address that? What mechanism do you have in place to keep humans in the loop?
Yeah, we engineer safeguards, essentially. It's like flipping a light switch. Like there's no way that you can have an AI take over and like control a weapon system. You just don't you don't allow them to do that when you're coding the software. Sometimes people say like, oh, they think Hollywood, right? They think The Matrix, they think Terminator. But I tell people, it's like, look, my car was not engineered to fly. It will never fly. I don't care how smart it is. I have a Tesla, it's got self-driving. Doesn't matter how smart it is, it won't ever fly because it was never engineered to fly. Same with some of the AI or the military unmanned systems that Shield AI works with. We do not engineer them to have the ability to make moral decisions about lethal force, so they never will.
Okay, speaking of Shield AI, one of your most well-known products is HiveMind. It's a system that let drones operate even when GPS and communications are jammed, right?
That's correct. Yeah, HiveMind is our AI pilot and AI ecosystem. So we put HiveMind onto other platforms, and then they can operate while GPS is jammed, when communications is jammed. They can autonomously execute missions. They can work together as a swarm or as a team to execute missions.
Once you warned Taiwanese military leadership that China is conducting GPS jamming around Taiwan, how serious is this problem?
I think it's a huge problem because most weapon systems, most drones are not enabled to work when GPS or communications are jammed. They rely on them. This is the problem that Ukraine has experienced against Russia. Russia is jamming. We operate there every single day with our VBAT aircraft. GPS and communications are jammed on 100% of the missions. And so if your systems are unable to work when GPS or communications are jammed, it's a big, big challenge. So I think it's imperative that Taiwan, and this is something that we are working with your military leaders and your industry, start to field AI piloted systems so that they can work while GPS and communications are jammed. So last week, we had a bunch of our HiveMind team out here. They met with the top 10 drone manufacturers in Taiwan because we want to help them build AI pilots with the same developer tools, same infrastructure, the same pipelines that have made Shield AI successful. And we're also working with NSYST on this, the National Science and Technology Agency for Taiwan, so that Taiwan is able to indigenize and produce locally AI pilots that can enable unmanned systems to work while GPS and communications are jammed.
Okay, so Taiwan has access to that already.
We're working with them on it. And what we're trying to do is scale it out to the entire Taiwan drone industry and to the entire Taiwan military.
That's really good to hear. So beyond the GPS jamming issue, in your work with Taiwan's military and defense industry, what other areas do you think Taiwan still needs to strengthen?
Where I think Taiwan is actually excelling right now is their leadership. Their military leadership is taking very seriously the need to improve capabilities on Taiwan, to train, to rehearse. The more military leaders that I meet with, the more impressed I am with what they are doing. I do think, right, they're going through a major modernization effort, making sure that they have the equipment, the weapon systems that are going to actually provide asymmetric value in a conflict with China. And so, I would say it's like, look, they recognize it's probably a weaker area and they're trying to improve on it. That's why they submitted their budget to the president, why the president has asked for a $40 billion special defense budget. It's because they recognize this is an area that they want to improve on and that they need to improve on. And sometimes I think people don't realize how the Taiwan military focuses on existential threat. It is existential if China were to invade Taiwan. And so it's just not worth ever finding that out. And I think they recognize that with Russia, Ukraine. A lot of people thought, well, it's a world at peace. No country will ever invade a modern country. Russia invades Ukraine. I think very much that Taiwan needs to take seriously.
And you have said Shield AI plans to keep expanding its investment in Taiwan over the next 5 years. What opportunity do you see here?
I think there's tremendous opportunity in Taiwan. And I was telling our team, I was telling a panel on the Indo-Pacific Forum the other day, I can't think of a more important problem to work on than preventing a war between China, between Taiwan, the United States. Again, I've been to war. It is awful. It is ugly. I never want my kids to have to go to war. I'd never want Taiwan to ever experience a war against China. But to make that a reality, you have to make the investments. And the cool thing is Taiwan is making those investments. Shield AI is making those investments in Taiwan. I think we have about 6 people that work out of Taipei 101. 5 of them are Taiwan local nationals. I think we'll probably be about 20, 25 people by the end of the year.
Wow.
I think we will probably be in the hundreds in the next 3 to 5 years.
I'm a little bit curious about how developed is Taiwan's defense industry?
Taiwan's defense industry is developing, is what I'll say. I think they have a lot of things right. I think they have good capabilities on Taiwan. That's what I'll say. The fact that Taiwan has built its own submarine is a very impressive. It is hard to build your own indigenous submarine. I think they've got a lot of the tactical capabilities that are good, but I think they could get better. And I think you'll start to see that as the military, as the EY recognizes that they need to invest in local industry, adapt some of, the manufacturing players here to actually build out these drones. And we see that, right? They want to produce 40,000 local Taiwan drones. I'm glad that they're doing for the military. I'm glad they're doing that now versus, waiting for a conflict to kick off, which is, what Ukraine was not building drones until Russia invaded, right? It's like what they should have done is build drones, thousands of drones beforehand.
Okay, I want to ask something a bit more sensitive. Everyone knows Taiwan is heavily reliant on U.S. military support, right? But a lot of people in Taiwan feels that the U.S. have been slow and hesitant when it comes to arms sales. Of course, you're not part of the U.S. government, but as someone who works with both the U.S. and Taiwanese governments, what's your opinion on this?
So the foreign military sales process is slow. Foreign military sales is when Taiwan buys from the U.S. government and the U.S. government issues a contract to a defense contractor in the United States. It's not that they want to be slow. They're just all governments are slow and all foreign military sales are slow. So it has nothing to do with it, being Taiwan singled out for actually being slow in terms of that. It's just like we have a lot of work to do on when I say we, the United States has a lot of work to do on the defense acquisition side of things. Where I do think is you can move faster with direct commercial sales. And I think it's important for the Taiwan military to start to look at pulling that lever more, because traditionally they've done foreign military sales, which is buy from the US contracts out. You can move faster simply buying from a U.S. company or a Taiwan company directly and not having to go through that foreign military sales process.
On a more personal note, you're a descendant of Tseng and your father was born in Taipei and you grew up in the U.S. and serving the American military. And now here you are come to Taiwan frequently representing a U.S. defense company. Does any of this carry personal meaning or for you?
Yeah. Look, you see my hair stand up on my arms when you talk about it. It carries personal meaning for me for sure. Again, Taiwan's so important to me, and it's not just because I'm a Taiwanese American and my dad was born in Taiwan, or because my grandfather came here and worked as a foreign diplomat starting in 1949 in Taiwan. But it's important to me because my mission, Shield AI's mission, is to protect service members and civilians and to deter war. And so I can't think of a more important problem to solve than making sure that we can prevent a war between Taiwan, China, and the USA. And I'll just say it's an added bonus that I get to do it in a country where my father was born, where my grandfather served in the government. That's just a sweetener. That's the cherry on top, as we would say.
Okay, and looking ahead, what are your hopes for the collaboration in Taiwan?
we just want to work closely with Taiwan industry and the Taiwan military. At the end of the day, we have to deliver value. We have to show it works. We have to deliver the outcomes that the military wants. And so that's what I want us to be seen as a trusted partner at the end of the day. We're starting to do that with Taiwan industry, right? Obviously partnered with AIDC, but also partnering with these Taiwan drone companies and enabling them with the capabilities, the AI capabilities, GPS jammed, communications jammed operation, autonomous mission execution, swarming. That is, couldn't be more excited to earn the trust and to support these local Taiwan drone manufacturers.
Okay, before we wrap up, is there anything else you'd like to share with our audience that we haven't touched on?
The one thing that I'll say is I think sometimes it's really easy, right? You said it at the beginning. You're like, look, I'm not a military expert. A lot of people sometimes don't think, right? Because it's a blessing not to think about your security or the security or well-being of the country that you live in. But I think it's important for the entire Taiwan population to know that there are amazing military leaders, military service members in the Taiwan armed forces that work every single day to make sure that Taiwan, your way of life that you've built here, is maintained and continues to flourish. But it's just important to remember that. I think the United States does a good job recognizing the importance of our military and what they do every single day. And I think it's important to recognize, for Taiwanese people to recognize the importance of the Taiwan military and what they're trying to do, which is prevent a war with China, which is a very important thing. It's existential for the country and the way of life that you all have built here.
Huge thanks to Brandon for such an insightful conversation. If you enjoyed the video, please just share it, or you can click here for more related video. That's all for tonight's episode. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, Joshua.